Welcome to ZKast, everybody. I'm ZScaler from ZK Research, and I have a special co-host with me today. It's none other than Bob Laliberte from ESG, now a tech target company. Bob, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Zias. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, so I'm senior analyst at the Enterprise Strategy Group, and I've been focused on covering the network space for a number of years now.
Yeah, you're one of the better network analysts. I like to, I think you're maybe the number two, so we won't say who number one is, but we'll just let people understand, think that. Now, I wanted to have you on because this was a big week in networking. Memorial Day is coming up, and it seemed like all the vendors rushed to get, product announcements out. And it's good to see all the network activity because, it's been my thesis for a long time that the network is growing in importance. And, it's funny that I've been an analyst 20 years, and ever since I've been an analyst, I've been hearing about the commoditization of the network. But if you look at all the innovation that's been driven into it, we're certainly, I don't know how you look at the market, but we're far from being commoditized.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fact that the IT pendulum is swinging back towards distributed only increases the importance of the network and the connectivity between, users and apps, users and users. So, and as we've seen over the last year, the network has become a really critical component for organizations to ensure their business operations on a daily basis.
Yeah, certainly, and that was certainly well said. And we had an event this week, a virtual event. Extreme Networks had its Connect event with the tagline of Advance. I thought it was a pretty good event. They condensed the keynotes and stuff down to 1 hour. Thank heavens, because I think everyone's getting a little tired of these long events. And to support what you were saying though about the importance of the network, they had Brian Shield on, who was the CIO of the Red Sox. And he talked a lot about the digitization of baseball and how, because of the pandemic, they had to pivot to digital ticketing, contactless purchasing, things like that. And so the network all of a sudden became really important. And when you think about what Major League Baseball is trying to do, he even mentioned VR and AR and things. No network means no fan experience, right? So I don't know. What do you take away from that?
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting, and I thought it was great that they were hosting it at one of the oldest ballparks in the country, but yet highlighting some of the most modern technology, right? I think the first sporting venue to implement a lot of these contactless technologies, leveraging Wi-Fi, was the Super Bowl this year. And so it was really cool to see, Fenway, someplace near and dear to me, right? Very close to me, to be able to go there and have a contactless experience. And so having everything digitized. And the interesting part is that I think it was really interesting to hear him talk about it's not just the things you'd normally think about, just like the ticketing, but also enabling all of the concession stands to be able to go with that contactless, technology. So, they clearly took advantage of the downtime they had in the off season to revamp the infrastructure there and to be able to roll that out and to accommodate, I think, what will be going forward. Clearly, as things open up, it's going to be great. More people will be going back, but it just provides a better fan experience by being there and not having to deal with money, deal with anything, deal with tickets, all that kind of stuff. So I think that's going to be a great advance for all of the sports venues who adopt this technology. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how else they can leverage that technology to enhance the fan experience. Like you said, potentially AR, VR type technologies, things like that. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, and as part of the event, actually, Nabil Bukhari, their CTO, came up with a new kind of a vision for the company, which is important because I think Extreme's done a nice job of rolling products together. But this is the first time I've really heard them kind of throw a stake in the ground, right, as far as kind of where the industry is going. He talked about something they called the infinite enterprise, right? And he had 3 tenets to that: infinitely distributed connectivity, scalable cloud, and consumer-centric experience. And I thought, given the state of work today, the infinite enterprise does make some sense because, frankly, the enterprise can extend to anywhere today, right? And I think that's. I don't know, do you have any thoughts on what they're calling the infinite enterprise?
Absolutely. I mean, I think at ESG, we refer to what we're seeing today as more of we refer to as the distributed cloud. So I know a lot of people like to talk hybrid and multi, but we've seen, applications are being distributed across private data centers, multiple public clouds, and edge locations, and the employees are distributed across, literally wherever. I know just in my town, I've talked to 2 of my friends who their kids have built out a panel van and they're driving around the country. They're still working, but they're working from wherever they happen to be that day. So that concept of infinitely distributed connectivity really rings home, where it's not just about connecting to the home, it's connecting to wherever they may be. So I think that really resonates for organizations that are dealing with this really highly distributed environment. Certainly from a cloud perspective, all of our research highlights that aspect, that during the pandemic, organizations accelerated adoption of public cloud services and use of in distributing their workloads to the public cloud. And then obviously that consumer centric experience that he discussed is something that's really important. The interesting thing is that when you're thinking about experience, it extends. Everyone used to talk about customer experience, but you're hearing a lot more in the last year about user and employee experience and what they're having, right? Because they, not only from running the IT environment, but also just what their employees are experiencing, whether they're at home, whether they return to the office, or whether they're in a van driving somewhere around the country, that they have that consistent user and a consistently good user experience.
Yeah, and if you're Elon Musk, that experience extends to outer space now, I guess.
Correct. Yeah.
So one of the new products they announced, actually, and every user conference must have product announcements, right? Was their CoPilot offering, which is part of their Extreme Cloud IQ, and it's an AI ops-based platform that's designed. And I like the term CoPilot because it's not designed to replace the network engineer, but in fact to work with the engineer to help them troubleshoot things faster. And I don't know any network engineers that like to troubleshoot, so I thought CoPilot was a pretty good product. Nabil actually said that it had an SLA. I don't know if it was actually a hard SLA, but he said it was 99% accurate, which actually, given the state of the early adoption of AI ops and networking today, that seemed to be a pretty big number to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. Well, it's interesting because they also, the thing that I found really fascinating about the intelligence that they were building into it is they actually integrated the worker, the human, quite well with it. So when you think about, a lot of times when we think about AI ML, it follows that traditional alert, recommend, and automate phase, right? So first alert, tell me something's wrong and I'll go figure it out. Then recommend to me what's wrong, and and eventually let me hit the easy button and go forward. I thought some of the cool parts I saw about CoPilot revolved around the area that I think they referred to it as explainable AI, right? So they're trying to take the mystery. It's not a black box that just runs off and does something, and oh, by the way, you might lose your job if it does the wrong thing. But it tells you, hey, this is what we think we should do, and this is why. And oh, by the way, if you want, you can click here and connect into our service center and talk to a human and so forth. So bringing that human involvement into AI, I think, is critical for its adoption, because ultimately all of these administrators and the people using it, the engineers, need to be comfortable with it. So I think what they've tried to do is somewhat humanize AI, and even to the point where, hey, you're not sure what this is, click here for a video, right? They're trying to really make it a smooth and a seamless transition to adopting that technology that ultimately will save them a lot of time and make them more operationally efficient, but doing it in a very human way. So I thought that was a really nice touch.
Yeah, and I thought the other really notable part of the keynote structure too was the interview at the end that Norman Rice, their CEO, had with Charlie Collis from Broadcom. Frankly, Charlie's a pretty big hitter in this industry. I was a little surprised to see him on there, but that was great for Extreme. And they did talk about how Extreme was part of the early access program for Broadcom, and for Extreme customers, that news itself is pretty significant, because now Extreme gets access to all the silicon from Broadcom earlier than a lot of its competitors. They get access to a lot of the software. They influence the roadmap, and for Extreme, they've made their bet with Broadcom. And I think if you're an Extreme customer, that was certainly good news. And I don't know if you had any takeaways from the Charlie interview.
Yeah, no, I think you covered most of it. I mean, it was great to see that they've got that type of a strategic relationship that gives them that early access, so they're able to bring new technologies. We know things are changing so fast these days that having that inside track to the latest technologies is just going to enable them to roll out that functionality that much faster to their customers as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, lots going on at Extreme. That's good to see. This company has sort of gone through some ups and downs as it integrated all those companies, but they seem to really have the engine revving now. So expect to see more from them. Also this week, Bob, I saw early in the week, Aruba Networks, an HPE company, they always make me throw that in, announced its 630 series of access points. And as far as I know, they're the first vendor to offer a Wi-Fi 6E access point that's business grade. I mean,
Right,
night
enterprise grade.
one thing like for gaming. And if you're not familiar with Wi-Fi 6E, this is Wi-Fi that uses the 6 gigahertz spectrum instead of the traditional 2.4 or 5. And what that, it lets you do a whole bunch of things. You get better bandwidth, you get better throughput because it's not congested. You should get better performance. It actually makes the 160, 80, and 40 megahertz channels usable, which they aren't really at 2.4 and 5. I think some of the key applications that you'll see will be more IoT devices. I think it's great for video early on. Eventually, everything will be 6E probably. But given that we're going to see a rise in the workplace in the number of IoT devices for people, coming back to work, even like cleaning robots, things like that. I think it was a pretty good announcement from the Aruba APs are tri-band, so customers can deploy it and still run their 2.4 and 5. And when the 6 gigahertz, the 6E devices come out, they can connect those as well. So I don't know. I know you cover Wi-Fi pretty closely. What do you think of the AP and then just the overall uptake? What would you expect for 6E?
Yeah, I think this is obviously great to see these types of advances, right? So the FCC just opened up the spectrum. I think it was last year, about a year ago now. And so to see that rapid turnaround and be able to bring this technology to market is certainly going to help. I mean, having those 3 bands, having, like you said, that capability to be able to, for highly congested areas and things like that, to be able to bring that additional capability to bear is certainly going to help as organizations come back. HPE Aruba's always had a focus on IoT and having those, so from the AP perspective, supporting additional IoT protocols is certainly going to help as well. And like you said, I think it opens up for some new opportunities and new possibilities for organizations that maybe couldn't use Wi-Fi previously for things like AR and VR. And, we know that it's going to be the new workplace, the hybrid workplace is going to be video intensive. So we also know it's going to be very much, when we talk about hybrid, people aren't talking about assigned desks. They talk about hot swapping the desks and so forth. So I think you're going to see a lot of organizations, moving to this 6E technology as it rolls out. It's certainly going to be, at the very least, it's going to be great for future-proofing organizations, right? If you're thinking about doing a deployment now that there's some enterprise-grade solutions available, it gives you a lot of options for how you build out your environment.
Yeah, and we talked about AI ops in the last section with Extreme. There is some AI built in this as well. I know one of the unique features it has is something they call I think it was ultra tri-band filtering that minimized the interference between the 5 and 6 gigahertz band. Basically, what it does is it dynamically, it's looking at traffic and it dynamically applies filters, allowing that traffic to stay separate. So it optimizes performance. Even though you've got all the radios in one device, you actually get very clean spectrum, whether it's 5 or 6
right.
gigahertz.
Yeah, and ultimately that comes down to it's providing a better experience for the users, right? So that you keep coming back to these same themes around it's operationally efficient, so people don't have to spend time troubleshooting those activities, and ultimately the people who are using it, the employees, the customers potentially, are getting a much better experience when they're using it. So,
yeah, I don't know of any commercially available 6E devices. I think one of the Asian phone manufacturers has one now, but certainly over the next couple of years, we'll start to see more of them. So
yeah, and like you said, I mean, this is something that's going to be rolling out over time. And as always, anytime there's a new technology, there's a lag between the devices having the ability to access that technology. But like you said, if you're thinking about rolling something out now, that ability to future-proof just makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah, and if you don't do that, what I always find is customers wind up having to do the deployment twice, right? They do it today, right, and then oh my God, we have all these devices, we got to do it now. So,
yeah.
Okay, and the last bit of notable network news I thought was Juniper's announcement of Apstra 4.0. So Apstra was an acquisition they made earlier this year, late last year, something like that.
Yeah.
And they were one of the first intent-based networking vendors. They are vendor agnostic, which is what I liked about Apstra. And this was their 4.0 launch. And so the 4.0 launch, it introduced things like sonic support, better support for VMware's NSX-T 3.0. They had a bunch of templates as well, right? So customers could deploy things much faster. I like Apstra. I thought there was a little bit of heavy lifting done to get it up and running. So the templates should, certainly help with that. I think from a Juniper perspective, they have kept the product vendor agnostic, which I think is good. Every time you close things down, you limit the appeal of it. And so obviously down the road, I think there'll be some Juniper on Juniper benefits, but they did maintain the vendor agnostic part of Apstra. And I think if you're a customer running a network and you're looking to do, some intent-based networking in your data center, Apstra is an excellent product. So that's, love your thoughts on this.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of the capabilities that you highlighted are going to certainly help a lot. I mean, from our research, we know that I think it's like over 75% of organizations still have less than 40% of their workloads in the cloud. So the data center environment is still extremely real. It's still large. It's still very complex. And again, having something like Apstra coming into that environment, and especially now with their ability to see into VMware's NSXT, having that visibility into the underlay and overlay is going to drive a lot more efficiency. I think, like you mentioned, they provided support for Sonic. So for those hyperscale environments, those people that want to build that out, they now have the capability to work with that. So I think a lot of what they're doing in that intent-based networking and the closed loop automation and things like that they have as part of that are all going to help drive a lot of the operational efficiency in the data center. And a lot of those things, like you mentioned, the templates are certainly going to help with that, especially in large scale environments where they need to roll out across entire fabric. And I think the other, like you said, they are keeping it agnostic. So they're covering Cisco, they cover Arista, Cumulus, and I think they added some of the Juniper switches with this as well, right? The QFX and maybe the SRX or something like that.
Yeah, and I will say that this is the continued evolution of Juniper as a much stronger enterprise company. Prior to Rami Rahim coming in as their CEO, I already questioned whether Juniper even wanted to be in the enterprise space at all. It's like they had a bunch of, I guess, interesting products, but they never really had an enterprise strategy. Now with this all started with the acquisition of Mist, and then 128T and now Apstra. They seem to really have the enterprise engine going, and they've recently come out with some Mist announcements, now Apstra, and this seems to be a company that's actually got a very sound go forward strategy in place.
Yeah, they've made some real strategic acquisitions, I think is the best way to describe it, to bolster their enterprise space. And we talk amongst ourselves about the mystification of Juniper, right, as they roll that out across their entire product line, and Apstra bolstering the data center space, right, and 128 Technologies helping out on the WAN side. They've got security, so they're playing into the, they've got options for SASE. They've got an end-to-end capability. They're going to be cloud-based in their management. So I think a lot of what they're doing is really positioning themselves to have significant growth in the enterprise. And I think it's not only positioning them, but if you look at their numbers, it's bearing fruit that over the last year, they've been making significant strides in the enterprise.
Yeah, and the point you made about the acquisitions being good acquisitions actually is a notable one, because I think they went from a long period of time where they had just wasted acquisition after wasted acquisition. So they seem to have figured that out now. So, good for them. And I think strength in the enterprise networking space, as we talked about at the beginning, is important because of all the advancements and all the different ways the network is touching us today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so lastly, I just want to touch on this. We don't have to spend a lot of time on it because I think we've been going a little while here. Is ZScaler announced their earnings this week. And while this is a security topic, they are becoming more of a network company, right? And so if you're not familiar with ZScaler, if you're watching this, they're a cloud-based security company that's really pivoted to SASE. And what's interesting about SASE is it's finally we've been talking about bringing security and networking together for a long time. Nobody did it, right? And so now with SD-WAN and SASE, that's happening. But their billings grew 71% year over year. The street was expecting 42%. So, they kind of knocked the cover off of that. The revenue improved 60% year over year. The street was expecting 48%. They had a lot of large deals. And the large deals is important too, because a lot of the early adoption of Zscaler was down market, right? And so in addition to, they've added to their portfolio as well, in addition to their internet access product and ZPA private access, they announced that they've come out with a client cloud connector, cloud protection service and stuff. So this is a company that when I look at it, they have a market cap of $26 billion on a revenue of only $656 million. You could look at that stock as overpriced, but clearly the trend in networking and security is to the cloud,
Yeah.
right? And they are maybe on the security side, anyways, the poster child for that. And this concept of hybrid workplace, you really can't use old school security, big heavy appliances in a bunch of places. And so this, I think ZScaler sort of epitomizes the shift that's going on in the industry now, where we need more agility, which drives us to more cloud because we need to deploy services everywhere. And so if you think of the concept that we started with the infinite enterprise, the ZScaler model, certainly helps secure that as well. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on what we're seeing here. So
yeah, no, absolutely. Like we talked about, the more distributed things become, the more you need to have solutions that will help you secure that environment and connect the environment. We've been talking a lot about on the networking side, but everything that's connected has to be secured. And so I think it was interesting to see when the pandemic first hit, a lot of organizations went to their old technologies, right? Hey, we got to spin up the VPN concentrators, get some more firewalls spun up in the data center. And they basically recreated, to ensure security, they recreated a model they were trying to get rid of with SD-WAN, and that all their remote users were now funneling through the data center to get to any cloud apps and things of that nature. So, the timing's been really good for Zscaler in that, with everyone remote and working from home and needing to be securely accessing applications, it provides a great opportunity for them to be that point in between. I know a lot of the SD-WAN companies already had basically point and click connectivity to Zscaler already. Yeah. And I think that's just accelerated throughout this last year. And certainly the SASE wave that's hitting us, right? I mean, you might say it's at this point, maybe SASE washing, right? Everyone is becoming a SASE vendor, but that convergence of network and security just makes a lot of sense. And so, having that ability to provide secure access to your applications, provide some protection, right? So you don't have to worry about ransomware and things like that when you're going through Zscaler. I think all those things are making a lot of sense. And as organizations shift from their temporary solutions, i.e. like the VPNs and things like that, and shift and look for a long-term solution, that the Zscaler is really well positioned to accommodate those.
Well, anyways, Bob, this has been a bit of a long one. We had a lot of stuff going on. So on behalf of Bob Laliberte, I'm ZScaler. I want to thank you, Bob, for joining me. Hopefully I have you again. And thanks for watching, everybody. Don't forget to click the subscribe. And I just want to give one last shout out to my media partner, eWeek. And this is done in conjunction with the eSpeak series. So thanks for watching. See you next week.